The pressure is growing on Jay Jones, the Democratic candidate for Attorney General in Virginia, to drop out of the race. It comes after Jones admitted to sending violent text messages directed at former Virginia House Speaker Todd Gilbert and his children. The controversy comes as candidates for governor are set to debate tomorrow live on thehill.com at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The issue is already becoming a flashpoint in that race as well. Joining me to discuss, Julia Manchester, national political reporter here at The Hill. Hey, Julia, so just to recap, Jones compared Gilbert to infamous mass murderers Adolf Hitler and Pol Pot and suggested in a hypothetical three-person scenario, Gilbert should be shot first. He also suggested he wished Gilbert's wife could see her children die so her husband would reconsider his political views on gun violence. So, condemnation has come from both sides of the political aisle, but the calls so far for Jones to drop out of the race only from Republicans. Why?
Well, there's a few factors at play. First of all, we have seen Democrats inside and outside of Virginia condemn Jones's language. We've heard Democratic gubernatorial candidate Abigail Spanberger call those comments essentially disgusting, saying she conveyed her disgust to Jones in a phone call. And if you're Abigail Spanberger, you're clearly not happy with this. It's been a pretty smooth campaign, I would say, for Virginia Democrats, including Spanberger, but now this is upended. The entire thing, or seems to have upended it. However, we are seeing a lot of Virginia Democrats not going as far as calling on him to step down. Number one, Jones's name is already on the ballot. Early voting has already taken place. When voters go to vote in November in Virginia, they will see his name. I think there's also the question of, there's certain power brokers in the Democratic Party in Virginia who have, stood behind Jones, like Senator Louise Lucas, State Senator Mamie Locke, for example, the Speaker of the House, a Democrat, has stood behind him. So I think a lot of Virginia Democrats don't necessarily want to create a divide there. However, from talking to a number of strategists in the state, the sense I have is that, even before this, Jones was running his own race. Yeah, they're technically the same ticket, but you vote for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general individually. So essentially, there's a sense of he's on his own. And Drew, we could very well see for the first time since I think Senator Tim Kaine's gubernatorial administration in the early 2000s, a split ticket. It's possible. We don't know if we will, but we could very well see a Governor Abigail Spanberger and an Attorney General Jason Miyares.
Is there an element of racial politics involved in this? Jones is black. Some of the top black leaders in the state of Virginia, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, I guess, have stood by him in this. Has that caused some of the other Democratic Party officials, the candidates in even the gubernatorial race, to not kind of want to cross that line?
I don't think it's a top reason for it. However, I think it's certainly a factor. Remember, Democrats in Virginia, if you're running statewide in Virginia, you need Virginia's black vote. It is a crucial voting bloc in the Commonwealth. And we have seen leaders of, the prominent African-American political leaders in Virginia continue to stand behind Jones, who is black. So creating that fissure, so close to an election could, I think, send ripples through the party, create a lot of uneasiness, more tension. So I think there's a timidness to go that far.
How do you think this is going to affect the Attorney General race? I think this was already probably considered a closer race than the gubernatorial race. When you talk to insiders, do they think this could be some kind of a game changer?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was already much closer, and polling that was released earlier this week that was conducted before these text messages were released showed Jay Jones leading Jason Miyares maybe by 6 or 7 points, whereas Abigail Spanberger is leading Winsome Earle-Sears by 10 points. So it is definitely a bigger gulf. On top of that, we've seen that Jason Miyares has already outraised Jay Jones in terms of money. He has the incumbent advantage. He has the advantage of having the sitting governor out there campaigning for him. A lot of Virginia Republicans I've chatted with have even said they wished, in the past that Governor Youngkin would have thrown his support behind Jason Miyares instead of Earle-Sears, that they would have liked to see Jason Miyares as the gubernatorial nominee for the Republican Party, but we're not there. However, he is the incumbent Attorney General. So I think it certainly could be a game changer. I think ticket splitting is a real thing. But one factor that's going to impact this, Drew, is how much early voting we're seeing and who's voting early. If, we're seeing in a lot of red-leaning communities and Republican communities, early voting numbers are spiking. So that could spell good news for someone like a Jason Miyares. However, if we see Democrats continue to turn out en masse, that could help a Jay Jones.
More significantly, nationally, when it comes to just kind of what the national political landscape is looking at, is this governor's race. Of course, we have this big debate tomorrow on thehill.com. Surely this issue is going to come up, and the Democratic candidate Abigail Spanberger will have to answer for it. The Republican Winsome Earle-Sears has already kind of tried to made it an issue in that race as well. What do you make of the possible impact on the governor's race?
First of all, I would be shocked if the first question wasn't about this controversy. And knowing, kind of how organized, how prepared Abigail Spanberger's campaign has already been just by working with them and seeing the rollout of the campaign, I'm sure, they are very much preparing for this, and she will be ready to give an answer and have that answer prepared. That being said, though, I think it could have an impact, but I think it has more of an impact on the Attorney General's race. I mean, these candidates aren't technically, if you vote for Abigail Spanberger, you're not automatically voting for Jay Jones. You vote for them individually. And I think Abigail Spanberger calling on Jay Jones, and Democrats have said this too, Jay Jones to drop out at this point, is a big risk, because ultimately that decision lies with Jay Jones. Jay Jones was elected in his own Democratic primary. He wasn't elected to the nomination with Abigail Spanberger. So if she were to call on him to step down and he doesn't step down, that creates another headache for her.
What do you make of the impact of President Trump getting involved in this? He is not so popular in Virginia. His numbers are underwater there. Him coming out and condemning the Democrat Jay Jones here, do you think Virginia Republicans actually see that as possibly counterproductive?
I think Virginia Republicans nationally, they like him getting involved in this race. They think it gives them a boost. They think it activates maybe conservative voters in Virginia who are maybe weren't as engaged before, but now will be engaged. And that could be very well true. The only issue is President Trump has a very, very low approval rating in Virginia. I think the latest one was at 41%, and his approval rating is somewhere between 53 and 54%. So him inserting himself into this race certainly, I think, is a risk factor, because he's already an unpopular figure in Virginia. I mean, just think about the DOGE cuts, the Department of Government Efficiency cuts that happened to the federal workforce, largely impacting Virginians who work in the federal government. On top of that, you now have this broader conversation about whether furloughed federal workers will get back pay. President Trump already is not popular in the state, so I think there is a real risk factor there.
All right, be interesting to see what happens in the debate tomorrow, and then what happens when voters head to the polls. But for now, we will leave it at that. Julia Manchester, national political reporter here at The Hill. Thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you.